I like to talk to you about a research that is being conducted in the frame of the Resist Lab project. And since this is a research about case studies, we are collecting case studies from abroad that can inspire Hungarian civil society organizations and also informal civil groups. How can they creatively withstand authoritarian forces? I also like to zoom into one of the case studies. And let me first talk a few words about the research itself, the research concept, and our main groups. Here you see the actors involved in the research. We are all civilization network members. This is how we applied for the grant. And here are the colleagues involved in the research. So our original standpoint was that, of course, we live in very turbulent times, also in terms of Hungarian politics. We don't know, for example, what next elections in Hungary will bring. But what is for sure is, like in many countries and contexts worldwide, a civic space has been shrinking in Hungary too, at least in the last 15 years. And the big question is what civil society organizations in such politically very unfriendly context can do. How can we renew our activities? How can we renew our practices? And our approach, our general approach in this research was very practical. We wanted to bring examples from abroad because we think that, of course, Hungarian organizations do a lot already, but we can still inspire ourselves from foreign case studies, not just in terms of narratives and general approaches, but also in terms of very practical and hands-on practices and creative actions. And our goal was to collect approximately 10 case studies worldwide, and in this case study collection we used also desk research, and we also tried to reach out to the main actors of the case studies and do interviews with them, and to gain their real life experiences from their activist work. And of course, as it is usually the case, at the very beginning, we thought in the research team that our goals are quite clear, and we just have to go and find the relevant cases. Of course, during our brainstormings and many negotiations during the research process, it turned out that this task is not so easy, of course, because we really have to define the real scope of our research and investigation. And we, I think, thought about and negotiated a lot about what is our core focus in terms of political context, in terms of geography, and in terms of the scales of the projects that we want to elaborate. And like I said, one important standpoint was that we are paying attention mainly to authoritarian contexts where civil society actors face similar challenges that we in Hungary, where the restriction of freedoms, the decline of pluralism, media pluralism, and the ways of democratic expression are somehow limited. So that was our scope. And then we found out that we can look at either local focused or more national level issues. We can involve rapid one-time actions, and we can also look at more long-term projects where when the anti-democratic system is being challenged with different steps of actions. And also we face this challenge that we have to somehow define our scope in terms of whether we are paying attention to specific segments and teams in the very diverse civic space, or we can also focus on broader systematic changes that are challenging systems as total systems. And finally, we tried to involve the cases with all of these characteristics, and our main driving principle was to really demonstrate and present illustrative case studies that are somehow successful. It was also a very challenging question what we define as success in case of a civic engagement project, but we wanted to somehow involve projects that are successful and that have the potential to be applied in the Hungarian context, and that can be relevant for our civilization coalition member organizations as well as for other Hungarian actors. And I just listed the case studies that we involved in this research. It's important to say that we started the research in March, let's say, this year. We collected the case studies by the end of this summer. Most of the case studies are written, so I think the rest of the research has been done. But we also thought that we want to use the opportunity of this conference to get new inspiration from our international colleagues, and also to reflect as much as possible on the Hungarian civil actors' needs. So we still work on polishing our research, and hopefully it will be published sometime at the beginning of next year. And after introducing to you the main framework of our research, I'd like to jump into one of our selected cases, which is the feminist anti-war resistance movement from Russia. We picked this particular case study for the presentation in this conference because we think it is a really illustrative example from Russia. And this case study, I hope, will give you the idea what kind of other cases are being elaborated in our research. So I don't know, maybe just a spontaneous question. How many of you have heard about FAR, the feminist anti-war resistance movement from Russia? Okay, I'm glad that some of you are familiar, more or less, with this movement. So what is it, for those of you who don't know it yet? It's a horizontal, decentralized activist and organization network in Russia that operates within Russia and also from abroad. So members of this movement can be also individuals and also mainly feminist organizations. The activists, like I said, some of them are settled in Russia, and some of them are already working from abroad. They organized themselves right after the beginning of the Russian invasion against Ukraine, on the very next day of the invasion, on the 25th of February in 2022, and they are still active. What they do is mostly small-scale, very visual, very symbolic, often anonymous protest actions in Russia. So no matter that many activists are outside of Russia, but their protest activities are concentrated in Russia. And their main goal is to protest against the war and to connect the theme of the war and violence with a feminist narrative. Their standpoint is that the biggest problem is patriarchy itself. This is the root cause of both militarism and nationalistic aggression, and they on the very short in the very short term they want to raise attention to the aggression by Russia, because, as it was mentioned many times today, Russia suffers, or the Russian population suffers from serious disinformation. There are very limited sources of authentic information and unbiased information from the war. So one of their key goals is to fight this biased information, and they want to draw public attention to the pointlessness and to the harmful and very destructive nature of the war against Ukraine. And of course, on the long run, they want to deliver this feminist ideology and concepts to the mainstream Russian society to achieve profound social changes in terms of the value system of the Russian population. I don't think I have to tell you much about the Russian situation. I'm sure most of you probably know it very well. Of course, in Russia, NGOs are facing various challenges and repression from the state authorities. Civil society has been operating under pressure for a long time now. There is a very aggressive and anti-NGO propaganda in Russia. Civil society organizations are labeled as foreign agents and extremists and enemies of the population. So this is the general context. And of course, Russia is being in war for now almost 4 years. Voices that are critical of the war are, of course, repressed, and the whole society is very tired of the war, and the apathy and this general attitude of the population that has been mentioned before in connection to any authoritarian regime context are very much relevant in Russia. And the key question to any civic actor in Russia is how to find tools for resistance and citizens' mobilization despite this very unfriendly environment and despite this harsh state control. And we think that the FAR found some really relevant tools and practices to challenge this situation. I think it's also important to tell a few words about feminism in Russia. There is a change, I feel, in this respect. To my understanding, feminism used to be an alternative social construction used many times by the traditional segment of the Russian opposition. But now there is a change, and feminism has been popularized a lot in Russia in the recent decades. There are many Russian celebrities declaring that they are feminist, and thanks to mainly social media, Facebook, YouTube channels, vloggers and bloggers, feminism is, I wouldn't say it's becoming mainstream, but at least it's becoming a much more widespread idea than it used to be. And I think this is important to understand the success of FAR, because this social environment was definitely necessary for their success. On the other hand, of course, the Kremlin is very aggressive against any feminist tones. It is an ideology to be persecuted, and I think it was not much mentioned in the previous presentations, but we can understand the case of women as minority issue, and as such, women are also targets of the Russian propaganda, and I think it would be also interesting to see how common element of authoritarian regimes playing with the gender roles, but we see this in Russia as well as we can see it in Hungary too, that by the state authorities, by the Kremlin, there is a very clear gender role expectation towards women. This is a very conservative interpretation of gender roles. Women are pushed to traditional roles, and apart from picturing women like this, there are also social policies and legislations that are very discriminative against women in Russia. So this is just to understand the big picture. But in spite of all of these intentions of the Kremlin, there is an existing feminist movement in Russia, and what I was trying to say is that the appearance of FAR was not without precedence in the Russian society. And like I said, FAR grabbed the opportunity right after the war to frame and articulate this very important message that war is the result of the same patriarchal functioning that is the result of violence and inequalities against women. And what is their story? Right after the invasion, feminists, activists within Russia and outside of Russia started to organize themselves. This organizing activity first was just to organize some small K local protest events, and then it grew bigger and bigger. And by now they are one of the fastest growing anti-war campaigns in Russia. It's important to note that their activism to a large extent is a digital activism. They organize themselves on Telegram, which is a very popular messaging application used in Russia. It thought to be a more secure, encrypted version of messaging apps. And like I said, first they used these channels. They used their initial network to share information, ideas, and information related to anti-war protests. Then I think the 8th of March in 2022 was a turning point. They organized a very successful protest with yellow-blue ribbons. Many people throughout the whole country marched with feminist and anti-war slogans. And the 17th of March, they signed their manifesto, which was supported by, if I remember well, around 50,000 of Russians. And to understand their success and visibility and the danger that they mean to the Russian leadership is that they were listed as foreign agents in November already in 2022, and later on they were also labeled as undesirable organizations. And if you want to grab their recipe or their successful tools, I think it's important to highlight three key elements. Like I said, they are a decentralized organization. Intentionally and very consciously, they want to operate in a leaderless manner. So, of course, they have key actors in organizing their movement, but they don't vote leaders, or they don't call anyone as a leader. They do small-scale, easy to implement, very cost-effective offline actions, which are difficult for the authorities to control. And I think what they are very successful in is relying on emotions. They operate with very strong symbols with which they can mobilize not just politicized members of the society, but average citizens. And like I said, their digital activism is a very important element of their success. This is how they avoid central state censorship. And this is the anonymity and avoiding the possibility of geolocalization of their activities are all important tools to sustain their activities. I brought you a few pictures with a few examples because I think they are really illustrative and they can help you to better understand what they actually do. I think it's one of the most symbolic campaigns of them. These are coins, rubles, and they put anti-war messages in Russian language to these coins, and they started to distribute these coins in cafes, in shops and everywhere. This was one way to really get everyday citizens involved and to deliver their messages in very everyday, hands-on channels. To commemorate the victims of the Mariupol siege, the FAR activists encouraged their other activist members to prepare homemade crosses and place them in different cities in Russia to commemorate the victims. As far as I know, in 50 Russian cities were these crosses placed in different public spaces. This was again a very eye-catching tool to raise awareness to average citizens that what is going on with the war is unacceptable. And they revived existing anti-war symbols very effectively. They published an underground newspaper which was looking like a lifestyle magazine. In fact, in the horoscope section, there were anti-war messages left. And another effective action was hacking store price tags. They went to shops and they left anti-war messages on price tags, again, to reach out to everyday citizens with messages that otherwise could be definitely be delivered in mainstream communication channels. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm really trying to speed up. What is their most important impact and success? I think the fact that they can still exist is already a big success. Like I said, awareness raising is one of their key contributions. And I think it's very interesting to see that throughout the years they are becoming more and more professionalized. And activists being active in FAR say that FAR is working for them as a democratic a laboratory where they can learn activism, where they can learn not just how to organize protests and actions, but they learn how to defend themselves from the authorities, how to provide the legal assistance to each other. So I think they are very realistic in terms of their limitations and potentials, because they don't think they can stop the war. They are aware of this, but they still find it important to raise their voices, and it's a moral obligation for them to go to the protests and do these everyday small-scale actions and operate as a democratic network in a very, very anti-democratic context. And what FAR's example can teach us in Hungary or in maybe other countries where civil actors face challenges like us, I think we can learn how civil society can counter the central and biased narratives and ideologies. It's also a very good lesson how they integrated feminist narrative with other democratic demands, and their very flexible way of functioning and their decentralized digital activism is also a very practical lesson for us, how we can manage or how we can run our projects and engagement and activities. And like I said, they are a good example of also how activist groups can become spaces of civic activism. FAR inspired many activists in Russia and outside of Russia. Sasha Skochilenko is one of the Russian activists who is not a member of FAR, but very closely linked to FAR and was inspired by FAR a lot. She became widely known for replacing supermarket price tags in St. Petersburg's shops with anti-war messages. Sadly, she was arrested and sentenced to 7 years in prison. And with the help of Amnesty International, she was released in 2024. And last week, she was the guest of Amnesty International Budapest. And we had the opportunity to make a short video message with her. So please listen to her message. Listen to her message as someone who is experiencing very similar threats and risk like the mentioned FAR activists.
Hello, my name is Sasha Skochilenko, and I'm an ex-political prisoner. Yes, I am that kind of person for whom you are fighting for. And I am free because of you. The very first day, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine have been started, I started to fight for peace because I had friends in Ukraine. So I did it to express my solidarity, and I was charged with 7 years for just spreading anti-war messages. And recently, I recognize that here all this Russian peace thing is also coming. This is a huge thing, to fight for human rights, to fight for human rights all over the world. And I'm never tired of saying, thank you guys. Thank you for standing up for me. And because of you, I'm free. Thank you for this.
Yeah, thank you Sasha, for these inspiring thoughts. I hope it will give you inspiration for discussion during the lunch. Thank you for your attention. If you had any questions regarding our research or to the FAR case study, please feel free to reach out to me during the lunch. And please stay tuned for our digital publication of the Resist Lab case studies. It is being prepared and it is coming soon. Thank you very much for your attention.